On one hand, the Chicago Bears' early bye week feels like it's just the right time for a team with a brand new coaching staff. And on the other hand, it feels like bad timing as they were just starting to figure some things out.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like the players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And on the show today, I want to talk about the timing of this Chicago Bears bye week, the earliest possible bye week in the NFL, why it's good timing on one hand and all the reasons why, hey, this is nice to have right now, and why it's bad timing and you think, hey, maybe it would have been nice to have it just a little bit later than week 5 of the season. But we'll use that to talk about some of the biggest surprises and disappointments in the season so far and some of the main things they need to focus on with this extra time because of the bye week. So I can really see this both ways, and I want to paint both pictures for you as to why, hey, this is great timing for a bye week, and hey, this is not great timing for a bye week. I think, first of all, the obvious thing here is that, hey, the Bears have some key injuries and guys that are close to coming back, and so having that extra week now for Kyler Gordon, TJ Edwards, Colston Loveland, Grady Jarrett, Darnell Wright, DeAndre Swift, to get closer to 100% healthy is really nice. That if the Bears had a game on Sunday, we don't know how many of those guys would be able to play. And even if some of those guys could play, they might not be at 100%, but they're good enough to play, so get them out there. And an extra week of rest can help them get that much closer to 100% before you start playing football games again and you start getting farther and farther away from 100% again the more games you play, just as the season wears down on players' bodies. So there's certainly a nice health break from having the bye week now when these injuries were just starting to stack up a little bit. It's also a nice time to check in after 4 games and kind of see what's working, what's not, before you get like too ingrained and like, all right, this is what we do well, this is what we do poorly. Like you can kind of reset some of that stuff and try and fix things before they become, fix bad habits from becoming bad habits and kind of further entrench good habits. It's also nice to have the bye week right before what's going to be, I don't know if emotional game is the right word, but the Washington Commanders game is going to have a lot of attention. It's another Commanders game after a bye week in prime time, where you get this kind of back and forth rematch of last season. Everyone's going to be talking about the Hail Mary, and there's going to be all this sort of extra noise around this game that maybe it's nice to have an extra week to prepare for that, just to kind of make sure you got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted in that process. Plus, I just think when you've got a new offense and a new defense like this, it just kind of gives everybody a breather, just to kind of like slow down and say, okay, for the first 4 weeks, we've been throwing a lot at you. You're game planning for opponents. You're still trying to learn, the finer details of the systems, and you can just kind of like slow down for a minute and kind of let it sink in, maybe refocus on some fundamentals, and then pick back up again in the hustle and bustle of the regular season. Like young players especially have time to work on more like fundamentals and like individual player development now after 4 weeks. Instead of just every day is just game planning and preparing for the specific opponent. Like now you've got time to focus on yourself a little bit more. So like it makes for the best time for a left tackle switch. Like if 4 games was already where you were thinking you were going to make a left tackle switch anyway because you were just disappointed with Braxton Jones up to this point, you'd rather do it with a bye week now for Theo Benedict to get ready than have just a regular one game week of prep time to get ready for the Commanders. So that all lines up for why it's really nice to have an early bye week right now for this team specifically. On the other hand, I can see it being like, well, a lot of those benefits are nice, but they didn't have to be right now in week 5. And you would have got those same benefits later in the season with the bye week, wherever you put the bye week. And it feels particularly tricky because they were just starting to figure some things out against the Cowboys and the Raiders, and you don't want this to sort of disrupt that momentum, right? Everyone was really rallying together to beat the Raiders at the end of that game, and you want to ride that high and everyone being bought in and each side of the ball kind of all doing their part towards the end there to get a victory. And now you're in a bye week, and it all kind of, I don't want to say it comes crashing down, but it just sort of kills that buzz a little bit. And it is a reset when maybe you didn't necessarily want to reset. You wanted to ride this just a little bit more. I also feel like maybe it's a little bit early to evaluate what you did in the first 4 weeks and decide whether or not you're ready to change everything. Like, it feels like a very small sample size. Because I think, week 1 against the Vikings is a very specific Brian Flores game plan, and it was also the first game of the season. So I'm not sure you're using that game as a broader measurement of your team so far. And then you get blown out by the Lions, so that's not necessarily like stuff that teaches you a lot about what you need to keep doing or not keep doing, because nothing was working in that game. So you got like a couple of games back to back of like, okay, we can look at that and evaluate. But if you're just looking at 2 games and change worth of like real good stuff that you want to try and tweak, that's not a lot to work with there. It just doesn't feel like they've had enough time to really see everything they want to see before they decide, okay, is this working or is this not working? Because it was working a little bit, but then it wasn't working other times. So it's hard to know definitively, like, do we keep trying it or do we completely change it? And if you'd had a few more games to keep trying it, then you'd kind of have a bigger sample size to say, okay, no, that's definitely not working. Or, oh, no, that actually is starting to work. So we don't need to change it. But now you're kind of left like second guessing everything. And maybe something was starting to work. So you don't change it, but then turns out it doesn't work and you got to change it later, or vice versa. It turned out you changed something that was working well because you weren't sure if it was going to be sustainable. Right? There's just, you wish you would have had more under your belt to really work with to decide what needs to improve or what needs to be different versus what needs to be, what you need to stick out with from here. Because now you got to really, it's a long stretch. It's the rest of the season. From here on out, you got, 12 more games of football to go here. And you're a little bit more stuck with what you decide from here, right? You won't have that pause later on to self-scout and reevaluate. I mean, you self-scout a little bit along the way, but like the changes you make now are going to be a little bit more of kind of what you stick with long term here. And so you better make those right choices because you don't have as many opportunities to kind of change that around. And then I also feel like from an injury standpoint, if the Bears had a game on Sunday, Kyler Gordon would probably play, TJ Edwards would probably play, Colston Loveland would probably play. Like, all of those guys had returned to practice this week anyway without having the bye week. So, it's not like you needed the bye to get those guys back. And they all would have rested up and recovered even if the bye was 2 or 3 weeks from now. So it doesn't feel like it's perfect or ideal timing, but it's definitely not horrible timing either. It's not like a waste where you're like, oh, what could we do with this bye? We're just wasting time at this point. Like, no, it's valuable to have still. I do think another like 2 games probably would have felt like the perfect number for me overall, as far as like having a few more games under your belt to evaluate, but then you don't want to wait too long and keep making some of the same mistakes over and over again. So it's a little bit nitpicky, but I think ultimately this isn't that bad of bye week timing, but it's far from perfect either. Especially because we've seen some really positive surprises so far that you want to keep building off of, and also some disappointments that maybe were a little bit worse than we were expecting. So I want to go through some of the biggest surprises and disappointments through these first 4 games before we turn our attention to the things the Bears really need to focus on with this extra time during the bye. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. See, there are certain businesses that just make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And that's why it's so great to be able to check out spots in your area that thrive on Square. I mean, even something like your local Shake Shack can be a great example of this, that can come in and be a part of the community and has their systems on Square that help keep local employees employed, local people fed, local suppliers, bringing them their goods. It's all part of this neighborhood of commerce. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. And for me, this week's moment that moved the game forward is really the moment that ended the game. The blocked punt by Josh Blackwell doesn't just move the game forward to the end, or the blocked field goal by Josh Blackwell, doesn't just move the game forward to the end, but it felt like it moved this Chicago Bears team forward past the skeletons in the closet and the monkey on their back. Like, this is a game the Bears find a way to lose, and Josh Blackwell helped them find a way to win and kind of push them through that doubt, that how are they going to screw this up, and instead replace it with that faith of they're going to find a way to win this one way or another. And that, to me, is bigger than just one win or one play or one moment for the Bears, but like a changing of like teams' fortune and momentum overall. See, when you follow what moves you, the unexpected, like a blocked field goal, is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. Through the first 4 games of the season, there have been a couple things that stand out as, like, I don't want to say shocking surprises, but like very nice, pleasant surprises that the Bears have been able to pull off through those 4 games. And then some very real disappointments that we came into this season with higher expectations for, and I wouldn't even say unreasonable expectations, but just they have failed to live up to the expectations that we had for them. Like, I think one of the big nice surprises is just how quickly Caleb Williams has settled into the rhythm and timing of Ben Johnson's offense. That it felt like something that would take longer to click. And that's not to say that it's been perfected and that there aren't still mistakes with it. But in terms of like knowing when to scramble and when to just hitch and fire the ball in there, we're seeing so much more progress from Caleb Williams, and faster than I thought we would. For him to be able to keep finding guys in rhythm and step up and navigate messy, muddy pockets to still fire the ball downfield. Like, sure, he hasn't been 100% accurate on all those throws and has made mistakes in the process, but like, he is farther along in that regard than I think any of us thought he would be at this point. I think we thought he would be making progress, but like, he's really clicking in that aspect of the offense that feels like the thing that should be the most difficult and maybe take the most time to actually settle in and figure out. In a similar vein, like, I don't think anyone is surprised that Rome Odunze is playing well, but I think I'm a little bit surprised like how great Rome Odunze has been this season. Like, yeah, we thought he'd take a step forward, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. Thought DJ Moore would get a lot of targets, and Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland are going to be big parts of this offense. You know, Zacchaeus and Luther Burden are in there, Swift out of the backfield. Like, yeah, we thought Rome Odunze would be good, but like, holy crap, he is great. Like, he looks like a top flight NFL wide receiver already through 4 games. Now he's talking about trying to push for Randy Moss's single season touchdown record because he has a touchdown in every game so far for the Bears. You know, and I'm all for shooting for the stars. You know, he's not trying to say, oh, I'm out here, I'm as good as Randy Moss, just that like got to keep setting the goals higher and higher. So I'm definitely good with that. But I think I think it's fair to have been a little bit surprised, like, not that he has been good, but just how good and how special he has been in terms of creating separation, getting open, making plays. And he can still be even better if he holds on to a couple more of those passes that he just hasn't been able to grab onto. But the fact that he's been so great in spite of having a couple drops like that is just a really, really pleasant surprise. And maybe the most pleasant of all the surprises is Tyreek Stevenson really figuring things out the last couple of weeks. And we still need to see it continue to sustain, but back-to-back games certainly means a lot more than just one good game against the Cowboys. But, forced fumble against Dallas, diving interception against the Raiders, on that crossing route too. I mean, the coverage has been spectacular. He's been physical in the running game. He just looks like a much more well-rounded, confident, comfortable cornerback. And he's always had a certain amount of confidence, but sometimes it's felt like, cockiness or arrogance, but there's more of like a calm, cool, collected, speak softly, carry a big stick kind of Tyreek Stevenson that we're seeing over these last couple of games. And for someone who both came into the season with a lot of questions and started the first couple of games with some rough performances, for it to have clicked this way really feels great. And I think we're all a little surprised the Bears have just found ways to win a game like that one against the Raiders, despite the flaws that this team very clearly has. And that's what brings us to some of the more, disappointing side of things. Like the running game overall has to be maybe the biggest disappointment just based on expectations. It was like, well, if there's one thing Ben Johnson's going to be able to do with this Bears offense, it's run the ball. Like maybe the passing game will take a little while to figure out, but the running game should lock right in. They got Drew Dahlman, they got Joe Tooney, they got Jonah Jackson, and Ben Johnson schemes this up so well. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball well from the very beginning. And of course, have not been able to almost whatsoever through these first 4 games. And that's been a massive disappointment and leaves the offense falling short of what we know it can be and what more it can do. And certainly I think that makes some of the other passing game accomplishments even more impressive because they've done it without a running game, but it's still a massive disappointment. And I think along those same lines, like the improvements, the quote unquote improvements on the offensive line have also been a pretty big disappointment. Like when you're benching Braxton Jones after 3.5 games and putting Theo Benedict in a left tackle, that's obviously going to be a disappointment. And then I think Jonah Jackson has been pretty strongly underwhelming, and Drew Dahlman has been, I would say, also underwhelming. We can nitpick on the degree of criticism to go to both those guys, but they have not been as good as we hoped they would be, and certainly not as good as the Bears made it seem like they would be. And the amount they've raved about Jonah Jackson in the offseason, and then we just haven't really seen that translate, has definitely been a pretty big disappointment. And some of this all goes in hand with the running game stuff. I don't mean to kill them for it twice, but some of it's the running game as a whole, some of it's pass protection with the offensive line too, though. Just has not been as good up front as it was billed to be, given everything they invested in trying to rebuild that group in the offseason. So that's where the disappointment falls below expectation. I'll say the same thing for the run defense, where it's like we came into this year thinking the pass rush might have some trouble. So I don't find myself hugely, quote unquote, disappointed by the pass rush because I thought they would struggle and they're struggling. So I can't be disappointed when my expectations were low and they're meeting those low expectations. But we thought they'd be better against the run. That Grady Jarrett and Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings in the interior should be pretty stout. Sweat and Odengbo are big, long defensive end edge rushers that Dennis Allen likes to have in there, so they should be able to hold up. And I think Sweat has done pretty well against the run, but everybody else has not in the defensive line. And then the linebacking core. Noah Sewell missing 10 tackles already this season. Tremaine Edmonds running into the wrong gaps and looking lost in running plays. It's a collective run defense failure by those groups. And kind of similarly to the offense, we thought, okay, well, with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon hurt, maybe the Bears are going to struggle in pass coverage, but we thought they'd be better in run defense right out of the gate here, and it just has not been the case. And I think both of these aspects that we're talking about are going to be key areas for them to focus on with this extra time in the bye week. But we'll take a closer look at what specifically they need to do to try and improve the running game and the run defense, plus some other things to work on with this extra time next on Locked On Bears.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
So as the Bears have an extra week here to work on themselves, self-scout, where you don't have to spend all of the 2 weeks just focusing on the Washington Commanders, but there is some extra time to get extra eyes on the Commanders in there too. But I think there's some specific things they need to work on. And I'll say on the front end, it's a lot easier to identify the things they need to work on as opposed to like solving it, right? It's like saying it versus actually doing it are two different things that I will acknowledge on the front end. Like it's one thing to just say, hey, they need to play better. Like, okay, great. Yeah, every team needs to play better at the bye week. But for specific things for the Chicago Bears, I think certainly when it comes to like the run defense, this feels like a lot of just like football fundamentals. Like when yes, they need to be better in run defense, but how so? Like, unfortunately, there's no magic bullet of like, oh, they just need to, I don't know, bench a lot, swap out, like put TJ Edwards in and the run defense is fixed. Or I don't know, bench Grady Jarrett for Andrew Billings or something. There's not just a one player swap and then, all right, run defense should be fixed. Like a lot of this stuff just feels like football 101, like filling the correct gaps for your linebackers, especially Tremaine Edmunds. Like if the running back is breaking it towards the outside and there's space between the left guard and the left tackle, like if that's your gap, you got to fill that gap. You can't overrun it to the outside of left tackle and leave this big cutback lane, or vice versa, cut upfield too early and then let the running back get outside of you and break contain. Like those kind of things we see far too consistently from Tremaine Edmunds in particular, but certainly, Nick McLeod in the slot. Nashawn Wright has not been good coming down the running game at all either, like from the outside, like multiple players. It's not just Tremaine Edmunds. I don't mean to just, bully him on this point, but like definitely see it most visibly from your big hulking middle linebacker who's one of the 5 highest paid middle linebackers in football, needs to be better. And like, this is like basic football. Like, okay, play is flowing this way. Know which gaps your defensive linemen have, know which gaps you then as the linebacker are responsible for, and then read the running back and fill the correct gap. Like it's not more complicated than that. You just need it to click for them. And same thing on the defensive line, like getting off of blocks. Football fundamental technique stuff, like get your hands free, keep your feet moving, get into your gap, fill your gap, make the tackle. If the running back's there, redirect him somewhere else. Like I don't have a magic solve there other than just like, hey, regular football stuff. And you expect, professional linebackers and defensive linemen know how to do all this stuff. They just got to do it more consistently and better and at a higher quality and rate there. So that it feels simple and stupid, but like that's kind of what it's going to take for this run defense. For the run offense, I think there's a little bit more to it. It's not just like, yeah, you got to run block better. Yeah, okay, we get it. But like, I think this running game is still trying to find its identity, and Ben Johnson needs to kind of find the right mixture that works for these guys. It's something we talked about on, I think it was Wednesday's podcast. Earlier this week, we talked about the offensive line and how there's, between them and DeAndre Swift, there's some incongruency, if that's a word. It's incongruent between like skill sets where like some of the linemen I think are better zone blocking linemen that can get out in space and move a little bit better. And some of the linemen are better downhill gap scheme blockers that just can get on double teams and push guys, but aren't really moving out in space as much. And it's hard to find, like, there's never going to be the perfect play that works best for everybody. And same thing with Swift. Like, we've seen Swift earlier in his career be a better zone runner. Lately, he's been a better gap scheme runner. So then do you run the runs that the back is better at, or the runs that the offensive line is better at? And really, like, some parts of the offensive line are better at one and some parts are the other. So I don't know what the magic formula is, but I think there's something to be said about trying to identify, like, okay, which running play calls really are working best for everyone involved, or the most amount of people involved, and do more of those. And then which ones are they either struggling to block or struggling to make the right reads from DeAndre Swift's perspective, and maybe run fewer of those. And you hope to kind of weed out the bad plays on either end and find the ones that seem to be working best for everyone involved. Like, it's a little bit more concrete than just block better, or, in the run defense case, tackle better. Like, the Bears need to work on tackling. We mentioned it earlier. Sewell's missed 10 tackles. Tre'Davious Edmonds has missed 5. They're missing, Edmonds is missing more than 1 per game. Sewell's missing more than 2 per game so far this season. Like, fundamental football stuff on defense. Offense is a little bit more like, let's figure out what's going to work well for everybody else. I guess one other fundamental football thing we could throw in for the offense is just, like, discipline with the pre-snap penalties and snap counts and focus kind of stuff when it comes to the false starts. I know Darnell Wright was kind of the biggest contributor there, but false starts and little penalty things that still keep holding the Bears back. Like, sit down during the bye week and take extra time to go through all those things. And then for Caleb Williams specifically, I think it's about continuing to just dial in and refine that footwork even more. Like, we do still see Caleb Williams miss open throws that he should be able to hit. And it hasn't been a detriment to the offense in the last couple of games. Like, they've been able to overcome it. It's been, 20th on their list of problems in these games, but there's still room to clean that up. And a lot of times when you see those inaccuracies, it usually starts at the feet. I mean, it's not universally the case there, but it's usually a good place to start when it comes to, like, are his hips in line with his target? Is he shifting weight properly from the back foot to the front foot? Is he following through on the throw properly? Like, it's fundamental mechanics within there that you can keep working on. And maybe the same conversation applies to the batted passes we started seeing against the Raiders. Like, that wouldn't mind seeing him work on that a little bit in terms of release angles, and also trying to have a little bit more nuance or variety in his delivery, where I think, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, so I don't want to rehash the whole conversation, but, like, a lot of what we see on those batted passes is Caleb is trying to fire a ball in there quickly and puts a lot of velocity on it. And in a lot of those situations, the throw requires the velocity, right? He's not just making all fast balls when he doesn't need to. Like, a lot of times he does need the fastball and is throwing the fastball. But when you're putting a lot of heat and velocity on that pass, those come out flatter. They don't have as much arc on them. And so when they come out flatter, it's easier for a defensive lineman to jump up and get hands on it because the ball is coming at a lower angle. But if you don't put as much heat on it and put more air under it, then it's easier to get over the defensive lineman and not let them bat the pass. So I think, well, I don't think the batted passes have been like 100% Caleb's fault. Oh no, he's doing something wrong. I do think he can also get better at, hey, there are times when you can let up a little bit more on the throw and put a little more air on it. And he can play a role in preventing batted passes, even if the batted passes aren't all his fault. And I think also aren't a major concern. I would call them a very minor concern, but not zero concern. Just very, very light on the concern. And you got the bye week, you got stuff to work on, add that to the list. So that's what I think the Bears can really focus the most on so far in this bye week. But, there's also plenty of room for changes as well. And I want to go through maybe some of the changes we might want to see the Bears make either internally or externally with this time at the bye week, especially trade deadline isn't right around the corner, but, it's coming up down the line. And this is a great time to reevaluate the roster and kind of see, do you need to make a move or not? So that's coming next week on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're looking for a second listen today, go check out Locked On Cubs, advancing to the NLDS with a great wild card playoff series win on Thursday night. If you're a Cubs fan or a baseball fan in general, Locked On Cubs is covering you for all of the biggest playoff storylines. But the Locked On Podcast Network has all your favorite baseball teams with daily podcasts, all your favorite NBA teams, NHL teams, and most major college sports programs across the country. So go make another Locked On podcast your second listen of the day. Coming back on Monday to make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.